Welcome back to another episode of the RAG Report, your short-term daily bulletin version of the RAG podcast, which is bringing to you leaders, owners, suppliers to the global recruitment industry on a day-to-day basis to help you navigate through this really uncertain time that we're facing with COVID-19. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Greg Savage. Greg, for those of you that don't know, I don't think there's many that won't, is based in Sydney in Australia, was a recruitment owner for a very long time, is now an advisor to many organizations across the world. He's a board advisor specifically to 12 organizations, has a global tour, is an author of a book, and I don't think there's going to be many people around the world who've been through as much, both positive and negative in this industry. So Greg, thanks for taking the time out, mate.
Thank you, Sean. It's a pleasure to talk to you. It's a tough time, but it's a good time for sharing ideas for everybody.
Of course. So, look, why don't we just kick straight on? Like you're an advisor to many organisations. I'm sure I've not got the same volume in terms of my clients, but I've been on the phone constantly. So, what's it been like for you over the last couple of days?
I think today we're recording this on Wednesday, and I reckon a lot has changed in the last 5 days, certainly in this country, right? It has been exponential deterioration in the outlook. And some of my clients who were talking last week rather naively about we'll ride this out and we'll chip away at the edges have come to the realization that this is going to be a significant downturn. So I spent the last 48 hours on the phone and video, almost the entire time to clients, but also to other recruitment owners and managers who are scared and wondering what to do, because I take the view that now is the time we need to help each other. I would say that the overriding concern is, of course, dropping revenue, but also the health of their staff, how to manage in the new reality. The legal position, I'm not sure what it's like in the UK. I think it's the same, but our government is not consistent. They're changing by the minute, it seems, which is really making people nervous. And lay on top of that, the gyrating share markets and all the other bad news. So it's been pretty frenetic, but we've pulled it together, and I guess my task has been to calm people down and come up with a strategy based on our best guess about what the future might hold. This is so different to any other downturn, Sean. I've been through several, big ones. They are economically driven, and revenues are dropping because of some factor that leads to a lack of confidence in commerce. This is health driven, and that is significantly different, because some of the solutions that you would look at to deal with this problem in previous recessions are not available to you. You can't say to your staff, let's go out and get in front of more clients in an environment where, you can't rely. Here's a big one. You can't rely on your contractor and temporary base. I've been telling people for 30 years, build a contractor base to help you in a downturn. That is still true, but what happens if the government sends everyone home? Which is not impossible. I mean, our pubs and sporting events are all closing down. A lot of our clients are finishing temps. And so the resilience of the contracting business isn't a foregone conclusion. So that's the sort of framework. I mean, there are some positives, and we need to look at them, or there are some action items more than positives. But that's the framework. I doubt it's any different. I've got a lot of people. I was due to go on a speaking tour to New Zealand this week. I'm free now because that was cancelled. I was meant to do a speaking tour across the UK next month in Manchester, Birmingham, and London. That was cancelled just in the last 24 hours, understandably. But I'm getting a lot of people from those countries emailing me, asking for meetings, because everyone is in a state of uncertainty right now, as you would know.
So, look, I completely agree. I think the state of the UK right now, as of last night, was they were talking about, well, anyone with any symptoms in a household, the whole family now needs to self-isolate for 14 days. They're advising everyone work from home. It's not been completely mandated yet, but I feel like by the end of the week it will be. We're obviously neighbouring countries such as France, Spain, Holland, Italy are all on complete lockdown, military lockdown. So were expecting that. I found my clients were quite positive on Monday. Well, they were crazy on Monday, and then they were more positive on Tuesday. I felt like there was like everyone got a little bit of a deep breath and then was like, okay, well, how do we work through this? What advice were you actually giving then? So give us an example of one or two of your clients and what you've actually said to them to try and get a strategy together.
Well, actually, the interesting thing is the vast majority of my clients up until last week, their business activities were pretty good. You know, they were making placements and the revenue was holding up. But the early indicators of jobs being pulled, job flow dropping, and temps being cancelled has started in the last 3 days, quite significantly. Now, to try and predict the future is difficult, sometimes stupid, but I think there are two things that we can say for sure. It is going to get worse, number one. Number two, we are going to have an economic slowdown, a significant one. Even if they invent a cure to the coronavirus tonight, which they're not going to do, even if they did that, we're still going to have an economic slowdown. Those two things are the first message I've been saying to people. The second message I've been saying to people, which might be helpful for your people, is you need a strategy on how to help people work in this environment. That might include working from home. It might include a lot of health measures. It might include a wide variety of activities. But before that, you need, and this is unpleasant to talk about, you need a strategy to ensure your business survives. Now, in the 2008, we call it the GFC, the Lehman Brothers thing, which was very bloody severe in the UK. I was running a business called Aquint in London and in Manchester. It was a fucking hard time. But prior to that, in the 90s, we had a much bigger recession. And we can expect in those types of environments, permanent revenue, permanent gross profit or net fee income to drop by 60% and contract fee income to drop by net margin, to drop by 30%. I would not be surprised if this could be worse. So the first thing I'm saying to people is, what's our cash position? Do a cash flow analysis based on your revenues dropping 10%. Well, don't bother with that one. Do it on 20%, do it on 30%, do it on 40%. And how long would we last if we kept our cost base the same as it is now, if our revenues dropped? Not our revenues, our gross profit. We've got to get that right. A gross profit drop to those levels. And, a lot of my clients are very, very successful, but most of them are recruiters, not accountants. And they're not that commercial. And they were shocked when their accountants turned around and said, we've got 60 days before we'll be insolvent. So the overriding message from that point of view was, and this is what I would say to anyone, who listens to this, if you own a recruitment business, you will not regret decisive action now. You will regret not taking action. So unless you believe that your revenues are going to stay at the same level or grow, then I would encourage action to get your cost base down. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you show this and everyone laughs at me as their revenues grow over the next 6 months. No one would be happier. I think it's unlikely. And so we've got to get our revenues down. Now we know in recruitment, you asked me specific actions, that really we only have two big expenses. One is staff, and that's the majority. That's 60-70% of our gross profit is spent on salaries. And the other is rent. And after that, it's really rats and mice. You need to cut all that shit as well, but that's not going to save you. You've got to look at recalibrating your business. So the other thing, that's the temptation, and I've done it before, I've made this mistake plenty of times, even though I've learned the lesson, I'm kind of stupid, is you're tempted to say, I was having a beer, I shouldn't show this. We're tempted to say, let's take the acai out of the fridge and put some cheap Carlsberg or something in there, and let's cut a few ads. That's not enough. You've got to take decisive action. It's going to get death by 1,000 cuts is the worst way. If you have to go to your staff and say, we're stopping this, and a week later we're doing this, and a week later we're letting 3 people go, and you've got to take decisive action to get your cost base down, because if your revenue drops, if your gross profit drops by 30 or 40%, you will go into a loss situation and you will lose, depending on the size of your business, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And you won't survive. So that's the first point. There's another whole conversation around health, safety, operating procedure, and how we actually operate in a world where we can't see our clients or our candidates, and we can have that conversation. But I think we should start with calibrating our business. And I think there'll be great opportunities going forward. And I think it's important to understand that this will pass and we will recover. And there might be a good bounce back, but you've got to be there to take advantage of the bounce back. That's what we've got to focus on now, making sure we are here.
Yeah.
To take advantage of what the future might hold.
So to lower the cost base, obviously the obvious thing people are thinking is, you've got to let go of people, which might be the most sensible and quickest strategy. There's other ways as well of, getting people to work on lower salaries, whether it's putting everyone on a 50%. I've seen a video from Simon Sinek on LinkedIn yesterday, who big famous talker, and he was like, if everyone hurts a little, no one has to hurt a lot. So by reducing everyone down to the kind of absolute bare minimum that people can live on. And also, I think the government has to step in the next month and stop payments going everywhere. So I almost think we might end up in some kind of standstill state where no one's paying any rent, no one's paying any bills, no one's making any money, no one's losing any money. So it's almost like put pause on everything that's going on right now. I think that would take a lot longer than it should.
Look, that might be the case. We're entering unknown territory. I just want to go back to your points about strategies.
Yeah.
We agreed on a couple of strategies today, but I'll go back to history. In the 2008, 2009 thing, I was running a business that had 250 staff across 16, 17 countries, including yours, and 6 or 7 in Europe, which were particularly badly hit, but so was Asia and Australia as well.
Mm.
And so you got 250 people. You can imagine what your monthly payroll is, right? And revenues were dropping dramatically. And the decision I made, and I had to fight with head office, and it was a bit of argy-bargy, was to put everyone on a 9-day fortnight with a corresponding drop in salary, right? So a 9-day fortnight, I don't think they use the word fortnight in the US.
No, we
9 days out of 10, yeah. So basically it's a 10% salary cut, right? Now 10%, it's quite a lot of money across that many people. It was not enough, and I had to fire people as well.
Yeah.
So I would say this, and this is harsh, but I'm not here to make friends. This is a tough time. You've got to look at your people, and anyone who is not contributing to productivity either directly or indirectly, you've got to examine whether you can carry them through the next 6 months. People shiver when I say that. I shiver when I say that. I've had to let people go, and it's my sleepless night material. But the option is that the whole company fails and you lose your house, right? So we've got to look at that and look at measures like a 9-day fortnight, or in the case of one of my big clients today, $120 million turnover business, I made a decision to put everyone in the business on a 4-day week, which is a 20% salary cut, everyone, CEO as well, and that is mandated. But they're also going to make staff cuts because we need to get that cost base down. So just be careful about retaining the people who can't make it in what might be a 12-month to 18-month scenario. It might be not as bad as the next 6 months, maybe. But look, we don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about in terms of predicting the future. But it might be that even when it recovers, it doesn't bounce back fast. It's going to be hard. Transactional recruiters won't survive. Those with superficial relationships won't survive. So why carry them, even for lower salaries, for all that period of time? It's awful to talk about people like this.
Yeah.
I know that. But we have, I know I'm going to go back into ancient history, Sean, and you weren't born, but in 1992, when we had a massive recession.
I was born. I was only 6 years old. You weren't 6 years old.
Yeah, you weren't having these conversations. But when that happens, 60% of recruitment companies in Australia and New Zealand went bust. 60% went bust. It might be uncomfortable to make these very difficult decisions, but it's better than being in the 60% that might go bust, because then everyone loses their job and bad things happen. So there are a variety of things you can do. There might be, this is another weird thing about this. You might say to somebody, look, why don't you take a 6-month unpaid sabbatical? Go traveling around Asia, have a good time. You may have said last recession, And then they said, that's a very, very good idea. I was going to do that anyway. And then you say, come back and we'll, whatever. You can't say that now. You can't say to someone, why don't you go and study at university and get those options are not open to us.
No.
That makes it immeasurably harder than I've ever seen before.
Yeah, I think like I said before, I think if things that the outgoings aren't stopped at a personal level, it's going to be that even harder. If people's mortgages and rents aren't going to come out, it's going to be shit. But everyone's in a similar boat. And I think, look, I love the fact you said that you're not here to be friends, because I think that's the mindset people need to have to survive. I think you can't be everyone's best mate in a situation like this. What one thing I noticed from you online, Greg, is you talk about similar things to myself around recruiters being less transactional, recruiters building personal brands, recruiters adding value. I think this is a time personally where there's an opportunity now for people to actually put content out, whether it's just written statuses on LinkedIn or talking to their camera or whatever, to actually make sure they're visible day in, day out. Because you're not going to get people are going to be scrolling and reading and consuming information faster and more regularly than they were when they were doing 9-to-5s. What's your take on that? How can recruiters at an individual level try and keep themselves front of mind to their customers? Because it will bounce back.
I think it's you're quite right, and I do believe in personal brand. I mean, you're asking me to be on your program or on your podcast or whatever it is, and we've never met. And I don't know anything about you. It's because of content, right? Mm. So you might be really disappointed now that you're actually speaking to me to find that I've got nothing to say. But it's all about building a brand and a perception. Now, I would go a step further. Let's imagine a world which is not that hard to imagine, where we're all working from home. We can't see our clients. We can't see our candidates. Our job orders drop. Hopefully there is revenue to be made, but it's not like the old days, and by the old days I mean 6 weeks ago, where the more outgoing business development you did, the more business you could expect to win. It may be just a world where there isn't much business to win, but that should not stop. My big message would be outgoing engagement. And this ties into what you're saying, outgoing engagement, but change your mindset. Of course, you're looking for jobs to fill, but it's now a time to be generous. It's now a time to share. I'm doing it now. I mean, I should be having dinner now and having my second Sapporo, whatever that is, But I'm doing this with you because, and I don't need my brand built anymore. I'm fucking 62, and maybe this is a really, really good time to retire. But it is a time to share. And this is where recruiters could spend time with clients and candidates. Yes, share, building their own personal brand, but do it by giving rather than taking. Help other people build their brand. Help candidates with their confidence and to revamp their resumes and to give them salary discussion talks. And I know these things are small, but it's not a time to retreat to our caves. And it is a time that, as you quite rightly say, that people are going to be spending more time online, reading, looking at things, because they're not going to be out playing football or working in the office, right? They're going to be hit. By the way, my comeback to football was tomorrow in the over 60s team. Can you believe it? And it's cancelled. Probably saved me a torn hamstring, mate.
Yeah.
But that's all been cancelled because sport's been cancelled in this country, even for the over 60s. I mean,
wow.
So I think you're right. Content, but not just putting out stuff. Engagement. Look for an opportunity to help somebody. Look for an opportunity to start a conversation, because when it turns, they're going to remember it, right? It's like building what I call goodwill equity, where it's more give than take. And you don't do it purely because you say you owe me a favor. Nothing like that. But just give. Like I've cancelled all my scheduled blogs and tweets because they're from another time. Yeah. And I'm now only putting out stuff that I think is going to help people and make them feel better right now.
Yeah.
That's what I think we need to be doing.
Yeah, that's why I think James Osborne said it as well. It's like the business as usual mindset is a little bit flawed. This is not business as usual. And actually, I've had a few emails or a few messages that are so like as if the world's not changed. You're like, are you taking a piss? It's probably automation anyway. You probably not wrote this to me, but I'm like, are you taking a piss right now? Like, if you at least address the fact of what's going on, I'm going to be 10 times more engaged with what you're talking about.
That's right. I think that's right. And look, some people, as I said, I automate some of my tweets. I write them myself with my own blogs and I automate them. But I schedule them, right? I do stuff in real time as well, but I may schedule something in January that might look really, really insensitive right now. I don't know. I've written 500 blogs and I repost them. I could be talking about boom times. I could be talking about all sorts of things that just won't sound right. So I think you've got to customize it. You've got to be, authenticity is the currency of online brands. We are all getting tired of being finessed by, you're a marketer and I'm a marketer really, but it's about being authentic. People want to believe what they're reading. And even, just getting slightly off topic, but sometimes people say to me, oh, Greg, I really like your blog. And I go, oh, great. And they say, I don't agree with anything you say, but I know it's your opinion. And I value that it's your considered opinion because that's real. I can disagree with it. I can think about it. That's valuable. Not that we're just putting out finesse shit for people to consume false information, not false information, but not our real value that we can offer. I think that's what people need to focus on.
I always say the same thing. It's like too many recruiters in history have been so scared to. I was a recruiter for 7 years. I've done the job. I know exactly what it's like. And you are scared of pissing people off. You want to have this client base and candidate base that love you. But the reality is, if you have an opinion, I always believe you'll get 66% of a room. You'll get 33% will agree with you, 33% won't, 33% will just back you because you got the balls to say something in a world of white noise. So now's the time, I think, to start doing that. And I do believe I've seen LinkedIn come together. I've seen more people get online, and especially when they're working from home, it's like, we haven't got anyone to talk to, so let's now do our first post on LinkedIn. You're going to get an explosion of this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think LinkedIn has softened in the last few weeks in terms of the way people speak to each other.
Yeah,
and the content, and your point about people being scared about being confrontational, or not confrontational, but being controversial. I don't think a recruiter should set out to be controversial. I think a considered insight, whether people agree with it or not, will still enhance your credibility. A smart-ass comment, a wild right-wing or left-wing view will not enhance your credibility, right? So I think, you've got to be considered. You don't want to be saying ridiculous things or very, very peripheral things. But I encourage recruiters to say things like, before this crosses, my clients are missing out on the best talents because they're taking too long to make a decision. They don't realize that talent has choice. A nice little blog or something, that's not controversial, but it's an insight.
Yeah.
It's an opinion, and it's helpful. And a client might say, well, we've got to go through due process, but it will still enhance that recruiter's credibility because the client's going, oh, the person's got a point of view and they're thoughtful about it. They're not just a resume keyword spamming resume sort of hacker.
Well, I look at it.
It's not helpful.
I think, look, if you, all good recruiters offline do this. If anyone who's been successful in this industry on the phone in a meeting, they've already demonstrated that, or else they wouldn't have been where they were. They've never got to success by just saying yes, 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 yes. They've had to give their insight on salaries, on the market, whatever. It's just taking that information and putting it online. That's what my whole business is built around. Greg, I don't want to keep you too long, mate, because I can see that Asahi in the fridge is getting colder. One final thing, I think I'd say majority of my customers are in that sort of 10 to 30 man agency size. Now, you've mentioned 100-man agency and person agency. Sorry to sound sexist there. How does that differ then? How does your strategy differ? Because we know about 81% of the recruitment industry in the UK alone is sub 10 staff. So we know the majority out there are independents, they're boutiques, they're in a different world to your 100. Who needs to worry more, and how would you advise them differently at that size?
Yeah, your figure is the same globally. Certainly in Australia, that 80% of recruitment companies have less than 10 staff, and that's because they started. Some of them are just lifestyle businesses, but most of them are started by good recruiters who've got good skills as recruiting and maybe business development, but they're not people managers. That group that are 10 to 30, that they are the most vulnerable. I call it the valley of death. It's the valley of death because they are neither here nor there. If you're very small, you can quickly cut back from 10 to 4 and even move around your kitchen table, right? You can get your costs down. If you're 100 plus, you can also make a big difference. You can drop 30 people without, it's very painful, but you're not going to harm the fabric of your business. And if you've got a big contracting business, you can scale down and you can right size. That little group, they are tending to still be dependent on one or two or three billing managers or middle managers. And they're very vulnerable, because if those people leave, and they also tend to have, there might be 30 of them, or let's say there's 25 of them. Well, 5 of them are in support at least, 5 of them are in management, that leaves 15. 5 of those are big billers, and the rest are either underperformers or moderate performers. That's the fact. So if you lose 2 of your big managers, your good managers that people look to, and 3 of your big billers, you can go from a profit-making business to a loss-making business just with those 5 defections. Well, that will not destroy a 100-person company. They won't notice it. So they have to, they have to look very closely at who holds the client relationships. That's another thing that people, I've got these 10 recruiters, they're all billing 300,000. Well, really? Actually, the relationships are held by 3 or 4 senior managers, and the other guys are just transacting and placing candidates in there. They're good, but they're not actually holding the relationship. That leaves you vulnerable if those key people leave. And so that, as I say, the smaller agency can come back to the 3 or 4 owners, or the 2 owners and the 2 big billers. They're going to be good. And your bigger company, they can also fail. Everyone can fail, but your bigger company, if it's properly managed, will right size and cut millions of dollars out of the expense line and get through it. That middle group can cut their people, but they can also lose their 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 key people and be left with the ones who are actually not holding the relationships and generating the revenue. So that's your problem there.
Yeah, well, I think that's really clear, Greg. Anything else you wanted to add, mate, before I leave you?
Yeah, I'd like to end up on a more positive note. For managers, I would say, and owners, I'd say stay calm. It's a leadership issue now. We've got to be both decisive and consistent in our messaging, but we've also got to be empathetic. I know it's difficult. We've got to be empathetic, and we've got to put our arms around the people, the ones who are going to say, and we've got to understand that these people are suffering stress, financial stress, mental stress, maybe even mental health issues. I don't mean at the extreme end, but they're stressed. And we've got to understand that that it takes a special kind of leadership to do that. But you've got to be decisive. And then everybody faces outwards. Once you've done all that, don't face inwards, face outwards. As you said, that can be by brand building, it can be by content, it can be by phone, it can be by Skype, it can be by email, messaging, keep in touch, help keep the presence up is important. And finally, this sounds like a little bit of a platitude, and I don't mean it to be, but this too will pass. This will pass. I don't know when. But your goal as an owner of a recruitment company is to keep your business strong enough to survive, so that when the good times return, you're still there to take advantage of them. And they will come back. Hopefully sooner than later. I'm not sure.
We really do hope so. Greg, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy and you've got lots of clients and family and all sorts. So for anyone listening, I'm sure you've had a lot of value. And look, let's see how this rides out. We might be having a second conversation if things are still like this in a few months. Well, let's hope you get back to me and say, Greg, talk to us about business growth and how to handle all these opportunities, because that's my favorite topic. But now we've got to shift, we've got to pivot, we've got to do the difficult things that we've got to do to ensure that we navigate these murky waters, sadly. Brilliant. Well, look, thanks so much, mate. Guys, that's another episode of the RAG Report. I hope you enjoyed it. If you wanted to reach out directly to Greg, I'm sure he'll answer your questions on LinkedIn. Drop him a note. It'll be tagged into the post here. If you are enjoying these episodes on a day-to-day basis, please do get out and share that. Share it on LinkedIn. Send it via text, WhatsApp, post if you need to your colleagues, your friends, because every single day we're going to add as much value as we can to helping you guys survive through this. I'll be back again tomorrow with another story and another load of insights. Good luck. Speak soon. Stay safe.